Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 205, Sugar in the Diet, Friend, Foe, or Something in Between. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Real World Nutrition. I'm Shelly Royale, registered dietitian nutritionist, and today's episode is all about sugar. So you've probably heard a lot about this. People either fear it, crave it, or try to avoid it altogether. And depending on who you ask, sugar is either the worst thing in your diet or something you don't even need to think about at all. And like most things in nutrition, the truth, the reality, the evidence is that it's somewhere in the middle. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about what sugar actually is. May not be as obvious as most people think. The difference between natural and added sugars, how much major health organizations recommend or what they have as the recommended limits for added sugars, the many names sugar goes by, myths and misunderstandings, what happens with blood sugar and health, and finally, answer the question about whether sugar is friend, foe, or something in between. So first up, I want to talk about the basics, what sugar really is. Now, sugar is a carbohydrate, and carbohydrates are one of the three macronutrients along with protein and fat. And sugar is in a category of carbohydrates. So all sugars are carbohydrates, but not all carbohydrates are sugar. And sugar specifically is a simple carbohydrate. So that means our body breaks it down into glucose, which is the preferred fuel for your brain, for your muscles, for your cells. So this is why sugar exists in nature. Fruits, vegetables, grains, and dairy all contain naturally occurring sugars. They provide energy to the body. And without glucose, you wouldn't be able to function. So sugar in its most basic form is not the enemy. It's literally fuel. Now here's the part, naturally occurring sugars versus added sugars. So this is where most people get confused or don't separate the differences here. So not all sugar in food is the same in terms of nutrition. So naturally occurring sugars are found in foods like fruit and milk. A banana contains sugar, but it also has fiber, potassium, vitamin C, and other nutrients. A cup of milk contains lactose, which is a naturally occurring sugar, but milk also has protein and calcium and vitamin D. Now, added sugars are different. These are the sugars that are added during processing or preparation. So think of the table sugar in your coffee, corn syrup in sodas, honey in baked goods. Added sugars provide energy, but really no additional nutrients. So this is why health organizations focus on limiting the added sugars rather than naturally occurring sugars. So what are these recommendations from health organizations? So when I say recommendations, again, it's not saying the amount you must have, it is how much is too much. So few different recommendations or health organizations here. First up, the dietary guidelines for Americans. In the most recent, I should say, the 2020 to 2025 dietary guidelines recommends limiting added sugars to less than 10% of your total daily calories. So if someone needs 2,000 calories a day, that would be about 50 grams of sugar or 12 teaspoons of added sugar. So no more than that. And that may seem like a lot, but if we put it in context, people are not even meeting that. They're way over that on average. Lower would be great. So that's where we come to the American Heart Association. It is even a stricter or lower recommendation. They suggest no more than 6 teaspoons per day for women, which is about 25 grams, and no more than 9 teaspoons a day for men, or about 36 grams. Some people still think that's a lot, but again, considering that the higher amount from the dietary guidelines, we're not meeting that minimum, or we're exceeding that minimum. And then the American Diabetes Association doesn't give a specific number, but emphasizes minimizing those added sugars and focusing on the nutrient-rich foods. So even with the American Diabetes Association, it's not talking about eliminating sugar completely, but keeping it in check. Now, let's talk about those sugar aliases, those hidden names. Because when we talk sugar, most people, even myself, thinks of a pile of the white granulated sugar. The stuff used in baking, the stuff used for hummingbird juice, the stuff used for so much sugar, that's what you visualize. But there are more than 50 aliases for different added sugars. So here's some common ones. You know, most of you know some of these or you've heard them before. So high fructose corn syrup, cane juice or evaporated cane juice, brown rice syrup, agave nectar, molasses, barley malt, maltose, dextrose, sucrose, glucose, fructose, fruit juice concentrate. And these are just a handful of them. And some people think that some of these are healthier, like agave nectar or molasses or maple syrup or honey is better than sugar, when in fact it is just a different form of sugar. It is not better, it is not healthier, and yeah, some of those do have additional nutrients in them where you would have to take quantities so much to have measurable nutrients. It kind of would defeat the purpose, not kind of, it would defeat the purpose of those added nutrients or those additional nutrients in those things. So what you want to do is look at the label, look at the ingredients list, and see if there's more than other names for that one, the primary name, sugar. If there's brown rice syrup or cane juice or beet sugar, they're all added sugars. Even if it doesn't look like it at first glance. There's times where I see fruit juice concentrate and people don't realize that's added sugars. So if you're not sure, I always tell people this, if you're not sure of something you see on an ingredients list, look it up. It's not that hard these days to look up what an ingredient is. So I want to address some common sugar myths. And these are ones that I see just come up over and over and over again. So the first one is sugar is toxic. No, sugar is not toxic in the amounts most people would normally consume. Of course, too much added sugar over time can contribute to health problems, but that's not the same as being poisonous. It is not toxic. It just isn't, no matter what people say. Myth number 2, sugar is addictive. Now, sugar does light up the brain's reward system, but so do a lot of enjoyable activities. When we have fun, when we are excited about something, if we're holding a newborn baby, if we're, going on a vacation, that part of the brain is triggered. And sugar does that too, so it's not unique that sugar does that. And what people call an addiction is often more about habits, restriction, or emotional eating rather than a true addiction. As of now, it is not in the DSM-5 as a classification of an addiction. Here's another one, myth 3, all sugar is bad. Now, I've said it already a couple times, but the sugar in fruit or milk comes with important nutrients. So it's not just about the sugar itself, it's about the whole food. And here's a fourth one, that you need to cut sugar out completely. And I hear people say this all the time, I don't have any sugar. Well, that's probably not quite accurate. They're just not using those added sugars. But no, you don't need to cut it out entirely because it's unnecessary. For a lot of people, it can lead to cravings and binges. And with a lot of things, the goal is moderation. So let's talk about sugar and blood sugar and health. So when we eat sugar, it raises blood glucose. That's its job. That's normal. And the body releases insulin, which is a hormone, to help move that glucose into your cells for stored energy, for later needs. The issue is when there's a large amount of added sugars, especially from drinks or sweets, and causes frequent spikes. Over time, this can affect insulin sensitivity and increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, especially in combination with other lifestyle factors. So it's not the sugar itself. It is the habit of having those spikes up and down that can increase risk along with other things. Now, a diet high in added sugar can contribute to weight gain, higher triglycerides, dental issues. But again, this comes back to how much and how often, not the occasional dessert. So why we need sugar and why extremes don't work. So as I mentioned, sugar in the form of glucose is essential for our survival. Our brains need it. Our brain runs on glucose. Your muscles use it. To fuel the muscles to do its work, it needs glucose. And even if you don't eat sugar directly, your body can make glucose from other carbs, so starchy foods will break it down into glucose. Or even in a pinch, we don't want this to happen, but it can if it needs to. It will break down protein to make glucose. So again, it's not the sugar itself, but how much and how often. On one extreme, people eat so much added sugar it can crowd out healthier food. But on the other hand, people fear sugar so much they avoid fruit, dairy, carrots, starchy vegetables, which doesn't make sense. Neither extreme is helpful. So, friend, foe, or something in between? What's the answer? It's in between. Sugar is not the enemy, but it's also not something to be blissfully unaware or ignore. It is a tool your body uses for energy. And the big key here is balance. Natural sugars and whole foods are part of a healthy diet. Added sugars can fit in, but they should not dominate your plate. Okay? So, balance, moderation, how much, how often, and enjoy it. Okay, so that's the real story on sugar. This is something I talk about all the time. It is not black and white. It's shades of gray, as are most things in this field of nutrition. Sugar is neither poison, it is not toxic, you don't need to detox from it, but it's not an essential health food. If needed, we can get glucose from other parts of our diet. And the bigger thing is, look at your overall eating pattern. Okay. So that's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. What I would love it for you to do is if you found this helpful and it helped you understand sugar in a different way, and you know somebody who's caught up in these extremes, I encourage you to share it with them. You can share the information with them, but even sharing this actual podcast episode with them would be great for you to do. And as always, I encourage you to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, where you heard this. You can do the follow or follow button or subscribe button. And I will be back in the feed next Friday with another episode of Real World Nutrition. All right, everyone, take care and bye for now.